What's going on, gamers? Welcome back to Gaming on the Block, your favorite podcast on the block and on the cryptoverse, cryptosphere. Today, we've got some exciting topics to talk about, and if you've missed the past episodes and you don't want to listen to the whole things, which I highly recommend you do, you can listen into the highlights if you want to on our Gaming on the Block clips channel that we've created, where we take the best parts and we make smaller clips of them and highlight the best goodies that people seem to like. So with me, of course, I've got my co-host TSG and Annie. Annie, I want you to kick it off and let us know what you're excited about this week and what we're going to chat about.
Yeah, so this week was really interesting in Web3. I think the biggest news that I saw was the Meta announcement, and man, this was wild. So my big concern from a decentralization standpoint is that these Web 2 giants are going to come in, and they've got literally billions of dollars that they're throwing into Web 3, trying to create their own closed ecosystem, multiverses, and worlds. And let's just say that the rollout from Zuckerberg was underwhelming. And we can talk about it a little bit here on the rest of the cast. But man, that was wild. So it's been an interesting week. A lot of other stuff going on in the Web 3 space. But TSG, what about you, man? How's your week gone?
Week is good. I've been busy doing just trying to do some other stuff. I've started doing some TikToks and stuff, so that's been fun. Will's kind of helped me a little bit with that, just giving me some information.
Look at you being an influencer, man.
I know, man. What's going on? Can you believe it? But no,
bro, can you show us some dance moves like on the podcast as well, or are you not doing that on TikTok? No.
We might be in the wrong genre, boys.
Yo, I know. Yo, fun fact. I don't know if you guys didn't know this. I used to be a dance teacher, like dead set. So it was a real thing. But yeah, anyway, I'm super excited yeah. I'm excited that we've done one rotation of this podcast already. And honestly, yo, dead set guys, this is probably one of like the highlights of my week. I'm always super excited to come on and chat with you guys. So I feel like always like good, fun, entertaining conversation, high level conversation. I'm really, again, grateful that we get to do this. Will, what about you, man? Talk to us.
I'm doing good. It's been a busy week. For sure. You guys have been keeping us updated on everything that's going on. And when I saw the Metaverse, like for those who haven't seen the Metaverse like announcement or like leak rollout that they did, like I'm so excited for you to see it for the first time. So make sure you watch and listen into this episode because dang, it's exciting. I'll say that. So it's been a good week for me, man. It's hella hot here, so I'm wearing my football shirt, making sure I don't sweat too much, and it doesn't show at least. But it's good. I'm excited about this week. Let's kick it off. Let's start off with the Web 2 companies that we've seen invest in Web 3 because it is nuts. When I saw this tweet and I sent it over to you guys, and I don't know if I called you, but I was like, guys, you got to check this out. Like right now, look at the companies that have been investing in Web 3 in the past year. It's nuts.
Yeah. I think what are the standouts? What are the standouts for you guys? When you guys see this, what's the thing that like really grabs your attention? I'm curious. Annie, do you want to start with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the amounts are interesting to me. When you look at it, they're fairly large numbers, right? We're talking about $1 billion for the top, 4 or 5 of these companies. That's a pretty substantial investment when they're not investing in their own firm, but they're investing in startups that are outside of their operational control. And so I think that's meaningful. It's in many cases, I think more of just testing the waters for companies this large, but super bullish on the space. And so for those, whether you're a gamer who may be not so predisposed to crypto at the moment, I think you have to recognize this is happening. The companies that are in Web 2, they're just trying to figure out what's the right angle for them to enter Web 3. So this is really an inevitable approach. And so the question is, how can we make sure that the space emerges and is a positive for us as consumers and as gamers, as opposed to a negative, like many innovations that we've seen in Web 2? Yeah. Will, what about you? What jumps out to you?
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about the investments. It's nuts, and it's cool because we see the number of rounds. Like, I'm assuming that is like how many times they've invested. We see Samsung have invested 13 times, but then we see like Morgan Stanley only 2 times, but they've gone in with like $550 million each time into those 2 companies there, which I think is really cool to see as well. And I mean, obviously Alphabet being Google with just a huge amount of money.
Yeah. I think, for me, the thing that's really, really interesting is like when I look at these companies, we're obviously going to see some like tech companies like Alphabet, Samsung, PayPal, Microsoft. Like we're definitely going to see some tech in here. But the more interesting thing, I think, for me is the financial companies that we see.
Yeah.
Like we've got a Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. I think BNY Mellon. I'm actually not too sure about those guys.
Yeah.
Commonwealth Bank is obviously an Australian one. Citi, UOB, Wells Fargo, like American Express. Like there's the majority of these guys that are investing are all financial institutes. So I'm curious, like knowing that, it makes me feel like, well, for any investor in any space, I'll keep this picture up while we talk about it a little bit more. But for any investor, you're not going to make an investment unless you think the ROI is there, right? And I think that's especially true to a different level for these financial institutions. They're not going to just be throwing money around. This is not what they do. There's a reason that banks pay you 0.1% interest, but then take that money and loan it out. Like their whole job there is try and make as much capital as possible. So I think when we see these things up here, like I think that's very, very bullish for the space in general. Apart from that, I think this one here really stands out to me. We've obviously spoken about, and actually let's look at some of the names that they're investing in, right? Are there any names that you guys are seeing that you like? FTX, we know, obviously. Yuga Labs, obviously, we know them as well. That's really cool. Sky Mavis, that's Axie Infinity, right? Yeah, that's Axie Infinity.
The Axie Development Studio, yeah.
Yeah. What else do we? Where is that? I didn't even see that.
Up at the end of Samsung.
Yep. Animoca. Yeah. There you go. Gemini, Immutable. Obviously, that's where I was going to go. YGG over here, which is crazy as well. So like, there's a lot of big names that we know, and it like one of the ones we talk about quite a bit. I believe I've talked about quite a bit. Is Immutable, right? Immutable X, and this right here, Tencent, investing in Immutable, $224 million. I think that's massive. Let me get rid of this picture right now.
And we've also got Prosus. We've got 2 companies investing in Immutable, which is really cool. And they're putting in $260 million too.
100%, yeah. So I think like when I look at Tencent, because for those of you guys, for whoever's watching who doesn't know this, Tencent is actually the 2nd largest company by market cap as a gaming company, like in the world. So they are the guys that own League of Legends and PUBG. So they have they're a massive, massive company. And also, thanks to Annie, he gave us some homework to read up on. And one of the things that it says there that this investment into Immutable is actually it's Tencent's first official direct investment into the blockchain. So I think if that's not a bullish sign for Immutable, not financial advice, more us as onlookers, or for me specifically, I'm looking at this as a very bullish signal for Immutable. Again, not financial advice, just what I'm looking at. But Tencent, for a company the size of Tencent and the hold that they have in the marketplace, with League of Legends, just for an example, for them looking at Immutable, what could that mean? What would happen if they do transition League of Legends into an Immutable X marketplace? What if they transition that into this blockchain system? What is that actually going to do for the space? Imagine League of Legends is one of the biggest biggest games in the entire world. If that transitions into an NFT space where it's not pay to win, but again, the skins are NFTs, damn guys, that's insane.
Man, it makes me so excited. Just incorporate it right now. It'd be so huge, and it was so cool to see a company like themselves leading the way on that. And we're seeing on other fronts, we're seeing Epic Games once again, acquiring Blancos is another huge company who's making the right moves, and hopefully we'll see that coming very, very soon. I'm excited. What do you think about the whole thing, Annie? I mean, I think was it the first move that Tencent has made into NFTs specifically? Is that what it was, or was it blockchain in general?
Blockchain in general, a direct into blockchain in general.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the main driver that I see looking at that list, most of these companies are building on infrastructure platforms. So as you go down that list, it's a mix of some guilds, but in my mind, guilds are almost becoming an infrastructure type type of play in Web3 anyhow. And it's because they're part of that underlying ecosystem that you need in order to have a sustainable model. You need players, and the guilds are the ones that are going to be bringing in the players. Now, I think many of the guilds you see, like I think Merit Circle, they may not have been on here, but YGG, those companies and those guilds are really, in many cases, bringing more scholars, not paying players to the table. But I do expect to see that transition as we have better games that are launching, where guilds are going to be critical to the long-term success of a lot of these actual gaming platforms. So interesting that you see so much infrastructure focus. Totally agree. I've said this, I think, on this cast before, but I was asked this week by a couple folks, which specific blockchains do I think have the best chance of success in the long run? For me, there's a clear number one and a clear number two, and then there's some others that are, potential third, fourth, and so on. So Immutable X is absolutely positioned right now as the best potential blockchain, as the layer 2 Ethereum. So I think I mentioned, they do the rollup, ZK rollups for transactions, zero gas transaction fees. They've got the best security model based on layered on top of Ethereum. It's not a side chain or anything crazy like that. I think Polygon is the number 2. And again, in my opinion, now Polygon is not my not my favorite chain, but I think from look at the number of projects, the number of developers, their scalability model, they're positioned well. And then beyond that, you can look at things like Solana and so on as eventually, they may have some market cap. I don't think it's a winner take all type of approach either. I think you're going to see a lot of different chains that emerge that have good games on them. And over time, we're going to get to where you can just be chain agnostic, and you may not need to know this is on Immutable X or this is on Polygon. You'll have more secure bridging opportunities in the future.
I mean, that's the goal, right? If we want to onboard more, is like gamers, they don't care, like they don't want to have the whole headache thing of caring of what blockchain they should be on, or is this the right, or is this wrong, is this secure, is this not secure, can I play with my friends here, can I trade the NFTs here and all that stuff. They don't want to care about that. So like you say, like hopefully in the future we it doesn't matter which one you're on, and like maybe you even don't know if you don't like dig into it.
Yeah, 100%. And like what you say, Annie, about Immutable, I also agree that Immutable is probably in the best position right now for what they're doing. The one thing that I am cautious of, not even that I'm like overly worried, but something that I am looking for or looking at, I should say, is like the scalability, because they don't really have a massive game or project on there that's bringing everyone to there yet. And once they do have that, are they going to have the infrastructure to actually make that and sustain that, right? And it's just something that hasn't really been proven just yet. So that's why I'm a little bit cautious. I have no doubt that they're going to be able to do it, but it is obviously, it'd be ignorant of me not to even like to say, oh, it's all like hunky dory and it's all rainbows and flowers, because that's the whole point of like projects, right? That they're here to solve a problem, and that's the problem that they haven't really faced yet. So to see if they can overcome that is going to be a big thing. I think the biggest project that I'm aware of that was on their project, was on the protocol, or on the chain, sorry, is Gary Vee's book games. I would assume, like I might be wrong with that, I would assume that would be one of the biggest, just because Gary Vee's celebrity and him bringing everyone to it. I could be wrong on that, and I'm very open to say that I can be wrong. But just based on like my assumption here, right? Educated assumption, I'd assume. And as far as I know, that went really well. So that was already one step in the right direction, 100%. So that's definitely a thing. And as for like the multi-chains, I agree, man. Like I think the whole winner takes all is very like tribal. It's very like outdated. It's a very outdated way of thinking. It's like today, I'm not sure about us. Like we don't play as much games as I'm sure we like, just time constraints. But I mean, if we did have unlimited time, I'm sure none of us here are going to say, yo, I'm only playing PC games, or I'm only playing PlayStation games. Like, that's just not the way that people think. It's like, oh, yo, we have again. I'll say Smash Bros. Because I'm not going to say Pokemon. I don't really want to play Pokemon. But, like, Smash Bros. Is on Nintendo Switch. I'm going to buy a Switch just so I can play that. Xbox has, I don't know, let me think of something. Fable. I'm going to buy an Xbox just for that. PlayStation has Crash Bandicoot. I'm going to buy a PlayStation just for that, right? Like, we're going to just choose the consoles and the chains that have the games or the projects on them, as long as they're good enough to bring us to them. I don't think it's a chain thing. I think it's a game thing. And that's my personal take on that. But yo, guys,
maybe one additional point here, TSG. I think the reason, there's two reasons that you see people arguing about chains. One is frankly just personal investment, right? They want to see the chain they own tokens in win because it increases the value of their holdings. The second reason, though, I think is a fair one. In many cases, when we talk about infrastructure plays or like in Web 2 hardware, oftentimes you will see only one type of a hardware win out in the market, and then everything else just goes away completely, and that becomes the single one adopted, right? So it's the same way also with some software. So you look at like Facebook and MySpace don't still exist for all intents and purposes. It's just Facebook. And so when you hear people talking about, are we going to have a multi-chain world, in this space, it's because in some cases you do see a winner-take-all ecosystem that emerges if one is just either far enough ahead of others or it gets the network adoption that then it's too difficult for someone else to enter. So I think that's where that comes from. But I agree. I don't think this is the case that you're only going to have a single winner-take-all approach that lands with the chains.
Yeah, and like I mentioned on the last episode as well, it's like I think certain chains will have certain utilities that the same way, like yes, Facebook and MySpace don't exist at the same time, but we still have Facebook and TikTok. We still have Facebook and Twitter, right? They play different roles. So I think the same thing. Yeah. And talking about Facebook, I think this is a perfect place to transition actually into whatever this is.
Oh my God.
I don't even know who wants to start. I don't know who wants to start with this one, man. Jesus. Yo,
I think he has really cute eyes.
Will, you're giving it compliments. Will, you can start.
I mean,
what do you think?
Look at this. They're able to get the Eiffel Tower into Web 3. How amazing is that? And I mean, Zuckerberg, if I had 10 people up and I had to guess who that is, I would guess that's Mark Zuckerberg. He looks just like him. No, honestly, what the heck are we looking at here? I think I'll give your thoughts first, and I'll say something else later on. What do you guys? We all know the thoughts, but go ahead.
I'm very happy that they've now made like the characters from the Wii console into the Metaverse.
Bro, that's exactly what it is. He's ready to play some Wii tennis,
Yeah. I've actually got an interest, like not as interesting, but a slightly different take. So I'll let us all roast this first, and then we can go into the actual takes. Annie, your turn, man.
Yes. So I'm going to be honest. I think Zuckerberg was way ahead of his time. We saw him that way with the launch of Facebook in the early 2000s. Who knew that he actually had developers in 2002 starting work on the Metaverse? Because clearly that's when this was built. So he's been way ahead of the game. This meta play, apparently very long term. In all seriousness, I think the graphics obviously are horrible. We don't see any gameplay, which is frankly I'm a little bit surprised by. I expected a little bit of a bigger rollout that had some sort of gameplay loop or at least an active video. But this is just from if you're going to show something off and you're one of the largest companies in the world in Meta, this is, I use the word underwhelming. That's probably the understatement of the year so far. This is trash, and you've got to do a lot better if you're wanting to compete with, frankly, a lot of small indie studios that are building in the space. I mean, I've been fairly critical of projects like Decentraland and Sandbox, just because I don't think that they're interesting enough yet to bring compelling gameplay to the table. But this, I don't know who's planning on spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to play in this metaverse. But it's leaving a lot to be desired at the moment.
Yeah,
I think this is his reply apparently on Facebook saying they're updating it. I mean, it looks a bit better. This looks more Pixar-esque. Still far from what we want, but definitely better than what we were seeing from the Wii era. That was just horrendous. But
Yeah, he's like saying like, yeah, May your updates coming. Also, I know the photo I posted earlier this week was pretty basic. It was taken very quickly to celebrate a launch. Bro, like I don't know. Is he horrible at marketing or something? Like, don't post a shit picture. Like,
Yeah,
but
I think
I think
yeah.
it's like I think this is a perfect example of like what we talked about last week. I believe it was last week, where we're like, should games release a demo or should they release like some like part of the game where you can play it and then like, yeah, but if it's bad, like then you won't play the game on release. And this is like a great example. Like, yeah, that looks shit. Now I won't care at all about what they're doing there. But at least he posted a reply.
All right. Okay. So I'm actually going to share my proper take now. And I think this is like, so I don't know if there was a very fascinating, I think it was in March. I want to say March. There was a very fascinating interview between Zuckerberg and Gary Vee. Like having those guys speak is always like fascinating to watch. So having them together is incredible. So I think Zuckerberg back then was talking. And when I look at this, I kind of just don't care. Like obviously we make jokes and we meme about the like appearance and aesthetic of it. Okay, so I'm wondering, where do I start? Okay, so Facebook, obviously, when they came into this entire thing, into the world, Facebook was the software, right? And the hardware was the iPhone, essentially. And because of that, Facebook as a company, I'm going to use the word Facebook as the company realized the limitations and restrictions of being the software and not the hardware. So I think what they're trying to do now is go the opposite direction and going from Facebook to Meta and becoming the hardware company, because that's where the same way that everyone is building apps to go onto the iPhone, they want to build the hardware where all of the Metaverse apps are going to be played on their thing. So from a business sense, that makes like a lot of sense. This, I don't think, indicates what their real plan is, because I think we're still so far away from VR and things like that. So so that's one thing that I think about when I look at this. And I like, as we joke about it, we laugh about it, but actually I think that they're still way ahead. Like Annie said, they pretty much have limitless capital, and they're so far ahead already. I think it's going to be very hard for anyone to actually catch up to them in the VR space. I mean, Amazon is doing some stuff, but really, I think it's like if they mess this up, damn, like that's very unfortunate.
And let me elaborate on this. Yeah, let me elaborate on this point too, because I think it's a good take. I actually would be even more nuanced. I think that Facebook doesn't want to be just the hardware, although they do want to own the best hardware with VR. They want to actually be the gatekeeper. They want to be the Steam. They want to be the Apple Store of the metaverse. They want you to have to funnel in through them to be able to play in the metaverse, and they want to take, as they've said, a 55% cut of the developers and the players' dollars on the way in. And so, again, from a community standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, it's terrible for gamers and for creators. If you've got a company that's taking half of the value, 15, 20% on the front end for the hardware, they're taking another 20% in, for fees for you to be able to list your own applications and games on their platform, and another 10% or whatever, in sales transactions. This is just a horrible environment to be stuck in. And so, again, from that regard, this is the reason that I hope Meta fails, because I think this is terrible for players and it's terrible for developers. That's why, for me, having an open metaverse where we've got more open source structures that you can move back and forth to some degree between them in an easy way is better than having these walled gardens, single businesses that in many cases don't have our best motives at heart. And in fact, I would say almost all cases that's true. I'd rather have community-run projects. I'd rather have independent studios that are able to build their own structures that you can sign up for whenever you want and leave whenever you want as well.
But this is actually very interesting, because this is like, I think one of the first times on camera that I've actually disagreed with you. I actually want Meta to win. I understand their business practices are bad, like taking the 55% cut. And I think consumers aren't going to stand for it, and they're going to have to realign and readjust what they're going to do. But the reason I say I want them to win is for two reasons. Like I say, they have the capital to actually design and manufacture and really build the hardware to a level that's actually decent enough for us to want to spend time and use it. And secondly, like I've said this multiple times, maybe in this in our podcast or others, but I don't like. It makes total sense to me that we need a centralized metaverse and a decentralized. My mom is not going to come in and make an ETH wallet and do all of those things. Like, it's not going to happen. But if she's already using Facebook and they come up with something, that's at least going to onboard her to the technology. So I think for the masses, we need centralized metaverses. That we need to do that. It's the same with like iPhones, right? Everyone had, not I'll say everyone, but again, generalized. I'm just going to speak generally. Like, everyone has an iPhone, and then after you see what the iPhone can do and you're used to it, then you get the people that jailbreak it and really go customize it and do what they want with it, right? So I think it's the same thing here. It's like, you're going to have the people that just get into the technology and then transition. So I actually really hope that they do win, because I think that's the fastest way to onboard the masses onto the technology. The second thing that I wanted to actually mention as well, when I was talking about their Meta's take on the metaverse and the hardware specifically, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think what they're trying to do in their priorities right now aren't actually to make it look beautiful. Like, I don't think that's the play. I think what they're trying to do is, because even right now in this Web 2.5 space, which is what we're in now, where we're not in person, but where all of our meetings are done online via cameras, this is what we're in. I'm not looking at your eyes. To be honest, I don't even know where to look at your eyes. And this is the thing that really, like, it's something that doesn't make. That's why I say it's Web 2.5, because we're still in Web 2, but we're not yet in Web 3, where we really feel like we're connected. And I think these are the small things, or even like looking at your hands when you're using VR and like actually understanding depth perception and things like that. These are very, very important for us to get to a full Web 3 metaverse VR experience, right? This human experience in the virtual reality. And I think that's what Meta is actually focusing on. How do we do this thing so that when you're in this space, even if it doesn't look real, the feeling itself is real. It feels natural. It feels human. I think those are the things that they might be focusing on, based on the things that I've heard and looked at and read. So as much as we laugh at like, oh, yo, it looks like it's like from 19, it looks like it's a thing from RuneScape. And it's very true. It does look like that. But I think those are points that no one's talking about, that I think, again, with the amount of capital that they have, if they are able to get that human feeling and human experience in the virtual reality first, like, again, I can't see them. And that's going to be massive. Again, once they do that and people get on board, the masses get on board, it's like, that's the change. But again, I might be wrong. I'm saying that a lot today, but that's my take there. I don't know, Will, do you agree, disagree? Who do you agree with, Annie or me? You want Meta to win or lose?
I don't understand why you gotta do RuneScape like that, bro.
Yo, Will's crying.
Yeah. I think the Wii Sports one was better, but no, I want Meta to succeed. I do get your point, Annie. I do understand where you're coming from. I do agree more with you, TSG, and regardless of what you guys think, I just believe that we need like big players in the space in order to get the masses in. And I think we see this all the time in regular business, where like, I think Apple is a good example of company that, like, I don't even know a good example of like wireless headphones, for example. It wasn't cool before Apple came with the AirPods, and now it's mainstream. It's like, oh, well, okay, Facebook are doing that. Well, maybe, like, we need to jump on. The masses are going to come when we see big companies like that. And for the part of where, like, yeah, they're going to take 55% of the money and like 50% of equity, whatever it is, like, they're going to take a big part of the business and the money, and it's going to be bad for its gamers, bad for its consumers. Yeah, they're probably going to take a lot, because that's what they do as a big company. But I do believe that there will be opportunities for us to have a good, like, enjoy it anyway, and whatever is you want to have all the NFT, like, own all of it, if you want to make money from it, if you want to game and whatever it might be. I think they're not going to get a monopoly or whatever. I think that there's just too many good opportunities in Web3 for to let that happen. They're big, but there's other like opportunities as well. So I do want Meta to win, because I do believe that they will bring masses that any other Web3 company can't do. And that's why I'm excited about more Web2 companies investing in the Web3, like we talked about. And that's why I'm so excited about Meta as well, doing what they're doing. And Mark Zuckerberg tweeting about it. Although it's shit, I do believe that he will come up with more things that do look more exciting, and it's going to bring the masses. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I just want to just add one thing. Even though I say I want Meta to win, I disagree, and I want to put this out publicly. I disagree with censorship and all of those things. I think that my personal belief is that I think that long form discussions is just the way, like, good ideas will win in the long term. Censoring ideas just seems like it's like a losing bat. It's like you're just like, oh man, I don't want you to win, so I'm stopping you right now. It seems like it's coming from a losing position rather than, because if you're like in a winning position, you're gonna let them talk because you know that you're right. So I do that's one thing I disagree with. I hope that they stop and all of these big tech companies stop doing that. But also, Annie, about the whole 55% thing, like, honestly, you say consumers are going to revolt. How many states in America or around the world do people get taxed 50% or 40%? People aren't revolting. They sit down and take it. Like, that's just what they do. So I don't think like people are going to fight back as much as we think they are. Like, for people like us, where we're more educated on the space, we're like, yo, this is ridiculous. But for like mom and pops who like, they don't know anything, they're just going to be like, oh, this is just what it is. Like,
yeah,
it is what
this
it
is what it costs to be on, the Web3 space.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think the difference here is you can have a company that owns the hardware that doesn't have a monopoly on the gatekeeping. And I think this is a similar topic to what we saw like with Windows and the Internet Explorer browser, where from a regulatory standpoint, you actually saw government step in and say, if you're building hardware and software and operating systems, you're not fully guaranteed to be able to set up whatever vertical monopolies you want. There are limitations, at least, in the US and Europe, this was true. And so I think this is the same question that we're going to see play out, is if you build let's say Meta builds the perfect VR headset, and this is likely going to be the case. And so I don't have any concerns with someone who builds the best hardware at anything. You need a centralized company that can pour billions of dollars in for a project like this. The question is if then they flip the switch and say, oh, and by the way, the only thing you can ever use this for is the Zuckerverse. And so, you're stuck there as a consumer. You have that choice, right?
Yeah.
The question is, do they have the right to do so? Absolutely. I think, though, there's not going to be compelling enough gameplay and content. This is not just true of Meta's metaverse either. I think this is true of a lot of the metaverses that we see today in this very early Web3 space. There's not compelling, interesting mechanics there. You can go and stand around a table and look at each other and say, oh, I can see you, Will, I can see you, TSG. But like, that's not going to be enough to draw people to a metaverse. You've got to have some form of community, some forms of gameplay, some forms of interesting entertainment that you get to participate in to make it be meaningful. And so 100%. my hope is for a more open world where you can move back and forth between these various platforms and communities and not be locked into a single space. So I think, maybe that's a good segue for us into this question of interoperability of assets across game ecosystems. Because from a gaming standpoint, this concept of the Ready Player One world, well, I want to take my characters or my items from one game into another, is one that has fascinated the community. But I think there's different takes on it. So why don't we jump into, TSG, you want to start us off. What's your take on interoperability? Do you want to be able to take your alluvials from Illuvium and drop them into, Crypto Walkers, or bring them into Star Atlas and have them commanding your ships that you're going to be playing?
In 13 years. No. Honestly, no. I think like where we are now, no. Like, that's not, again, we've talked about this, and like, as much as I love the Web3 space and the crypto space, I feel like we go from 0 to 100 very quickly, and we completely forget about the 1 to 99. Like, we have no interoperability right now. Objectively true. That is what's going on. Now people are saying, yo, we want full interoperability. Like, yo, damn, that's a lot of steps. Like, that's a lot of steps that we're skipping right now. Personally, as much, like, it's difficult, right? Like, if we can eventually get to a Ready Player One thing, and like, my take on Ready Player One is I don't think we're seeing that for another 20, 30 years, maybe. I think that's a pretty decent estimate, 30 years, give or take, potentially. What I'd like to see, and more importantly, is actually IP interoperability. And I've spoken about that on this channel, on this channel. This is my channel, on this podcast before. Like, again, I would much rather to see, like, all right, man, if I'm a Call of Duty player, I can get a skin in like the OG Call of Duty, and then I can like bring that onto the newest Call of Duty. Like, interoperability that way really makes sense to me. But apart from that, it's like the whole moving, again, like a Need for Speed car into, I don't know, man, like a tower defense game. It's just, or like a Yu-Gi-Oh game. Like, do we need that? Do we want that? It just seems stupid. And again, actually, going to the point that you and Brooks made, or like Brooks made, but in that interview that you guys had, like, people that are into COD care about COD. People that are into, give me another game, a random game, Spider-Man, are into Spider-Man, right? Like, bringing a Call of Duty skin into Spider-Man, like, people in Spider-Man do not care about, like, it means nothing to them, right? So that's why I think, like, if you can keep it in its own IP, that makes sense. It's like, oh, man, you have a Spider-Man costume, I don't know, from like the OG Spider-Man, you can bring it into another game. That's cool, because people that care about that are going to recognize that, and it holds value. But like, so that's where I stand on it. I honestly don't. It'd be cool if we ever get to a Ready Player One state where like everything is interoperable and it doesn't really matter. It's just like, oh man, you like the Iron Giant, you can bring that in. You like Gundams, Gundams, I don't even know how to pronounce it. You can do that, like whatever, like things like that. If you like Raptor, I think that's his name, from Rugrats, you could bring him in as well. So like that would be cool if you could do that in like this world where everyone can just do it. But I think that's a long way away. I'm happy just taking that first step into IP interoperability. Will, do you want to see the full interoperable metaverse? You can bring everything into each other. What do you think?
I want to see RuneScape characters in the metaverse space. We don't have that yet, TSG. No, I think you're being too negative. I'm excited about the whole thing. Where like I can bring certain things into other games, or like even what I'm more excited about is like bringing, if we have like a metaverse where like you've got let me think about this. Like back in the day, PlayStation launched something called PlayStation Home. Are you guys familiar with that?
No.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Basically, it was not open world, but there was a world where you had your own character, and I believe you had your own house or like your own home, and then you could go into the city and you could play with other players. You could interact, like kind of like a metaverse, but it was like 10 years ago or something like that. Then they had to
it was like a simulation genre.
Oh, okay,
exactly. And like you said, Annie, like it wasn't interactive enough, which like you're worried about metaverse like not being interactive enough with entertaining and like games and stuff. That's why like nobody played PlayStation games, but it was, or PlayStation Home, but it was really, really well done. They had some games, but it was like more of like mini games, and you could go around, you could chat with players, kind of like Sims, I suppose, similarly. But I want that for Web3, but I've got my Illuvials in my house. I've got the best gun. I've got my characters. I've got the armor in my house. I can swag it out. I've got my NFTs there, whether they be like actually physical, like Illuvial standing there, or if it's like a painting, whatever, with my ETH lizard that you guys are crazy about. And I think that would be really cool. And also, like you mentioned, like within the IP, where like, okay, I want to bring back the skin or a character from Modern Warfare 2 into Warzone or whatever of Call of Duty. Yeah, that is cool. Like I love that idea. I was actually talking about that with my Web 2 friends yesterday. We were playing FIFA, and they were like, what if you could play with like old teams with like Ronaldinho or Pele, and you can bring them and you can play them right now? We're like, yeah, it's a really cool idea. Same thing, which is cool. But I think, what if you look at like a movie and the whole world of Avengers, and I've only seen a couple of them, and I'm not an expert, so I might get this wrong, but you've got all the different characters from in there, where you've got Spider-Man, you've got Iron Man, you've got Hulk in there, and it's really, really dope. What if you do that into games? Like I do see a possibility for that. So I think you're being too negative, or like, do you really want a Need for Speed car in a tower defense game? Like, no, but like that's not the step. Like there's maybe I want a Need for Speed car in Formula 1 game or whatever, I think there is a market for it. I think it can be really dope.
Yeah, sorry, Annie. Before I let you, like, because I do want to say, like, with the whole like the Marvel thing, right, with the IP. But that's exactly what I mean. Like, they can do that in Avengers because it is all a part of the Marvel IP. Like, that's what I mean. Like, there's ways you can do that within yourself. And also, like, I actually think, and I totally forgot about mentioning this, and I'll say this, and then Annie, you can take it away. But I personally, I really like what Fortnite is doing. Like, Fortnite just had the collaboration with Dragon Ball Z. Like, I think right now, currently, Fortnite, this is a hot take, by the way. I think Fortnite is more of a metaverse than anything that we've seen that's actually out there right now. Like, in Fortnite, you can play as Spider-Man, you can play as Wolverine, you can play as Darth Vader. Like, you can have Goku swinging a lightsaber. Like, that is the most interoperable metaverse that I've seen, and that is not everyone else developing and then bringing it together. It's the one developer that's getting licensing. So I think that's probably the better way. Maybe I am just thinking like really old school because that's what's happening now, and I'm not thinking future enough. But I would just like to see that, like games like Super Smash Brothers, like Fortnite, where they get the licensing for everyone and they develop it into it. But I don't think that I would want to bring my NFT from Illuvium into Fortnite. Because how do they balance that? That's that's incredibly hard to balance on the coding side and the development side. Like, that means everyone unanimously needs to be working together. And that, man, like, we have wars. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, you have GameFi companies fighting with each other, where it's not even like to get everyone to work unanimously. Damn, man. Like,
of course.
Yeah.
But that is a cool idea, though, and it's cool what they do. But with that said, I have no idea if it's like actually like doable, but I do want to see it, even if it's just like a PlayStation Home kind of thing, where you've got your home, you got your NFTs there, you can walk around the city, you can play games. But Annie, give your take.
Yeah, no, I think there's so much to unpack here. The main topics that I see, the first is technical. How would you do this? The second is incentive based. So why would developers do this? Why would players want it? And the third one is what's actually driving the concept. So maybe to run through them quickly, the technical question is, how would you integrate? Let's use the racing example. So how would you integrate something from Grand Theft Auto, a car, into a Formula One racing game, right? The question, how do you balance those stats? TSG, you hit on, is 100% the right one, because unless you have identical stats and identical impacts, and you have a similarly scaled structure between the assets, you're not going to have gameplay that makes sense. Because if my speed rating is 200 in one game for the fastest car, and it's 100 in another game for the fastest car, well, of course you can't just bring those two in, because the slowest car in the first game is going to be the best car, compared to anything else from that second one. So you've got to address questions about overall balance and rating. And then, in many cases, even if you're talking the same sort of class of object, like a vehicle or a weapon, the phrase, you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight, I think applies here. Because, for instance, if you're in an FPS game, and from another platform, you have a sword or a knife or a machete or whatever, like, is that really going to be helpful for you? And this is just staying within like a fighting game genre. Is that a meaningful NFT or component that you want to have in the game, or is it basically useless? As much fun as it might be, if you're doing like hand-to-hand combat in another type of game, it's not so value added. So the second one is really, when you look at these different worlds, why are players asking for interoperability? And I think it comes down to two things. And TSG, you mentioned my interview with Brooks from NOR that I dropped this past week. We had a long discussion about this. Check out that interview if you want to get into more depth. There are two things that I think players want when they talk about, I want to bring my items or characters from one game to another. One is they want a sense of community, and two is they want a sense of significance for their achievements in game. So you either want to be able to show off your stuff to other people, and together between you and your guild mates or your best friends, show off that swag that you got, or you want to use it to help play with each other. In many cases, I think the significance is completely lost, because, like you said, if I've got an amazing skin from Spider-Man and I bring that into, Halo, or, I bring that into World of Warcraft, they don't know, because the IP, the brand recognition, that entire flex that you were trying to bring in is just completely lost, because the people don't know what it stood for. And it's also pretty easy to introduce, I'm going to say, counterfeits, where if you can bring a skin in from your Spider-Man, I can create one that looks identical and has most of the same meta properties around it, and bring it into the same game. And I can say, oh, I've got my Spider-Man skin too. It's the same as yours. And maybe you had to grind for like 1,000 hours and be, top 10 player in the world to get that skin in your game. But it's indistinguishable from mine when we bring it into, a shared ecosystem. So I think the significance really is lost. The community, I think, is a question around more environment and lore. And so if you've got a carefully curated world, like, again, let's say Grand Theft Auto, right? And, you've got the artwork, you've got the gameplay mechanics for a game like this. And all of a sudden, I introduce Pikachu, and he hops in and he starts driving my car, or Baby Yoda comes, floating in, and all of a sudden you're running over Baby Yoda. Like, it breaks the immersion of the game. And
I was just about to say that,
yeah, and all of a sudden really able to kind of destroy the immersion and the community aspect that you're really trying to build in a game. And so developers don't really have an incentive to take their carefully crafted worlds and just open them up to whatever wants to walk in through the door, and assume that you're going to get something better than having the carefully designed gameplay that's been built.
Agreed. It's like the immersion thing is what I was thinking about. It's like, man, imagine if, again, I'm going to come for RuneScape again, Will, because you've made it clear that that's your weak spot. But like imagine playing Grand Theft Auto, like you're saying, Annie, and then bringing a RuneScape character in. That's just like, yo, like.
But it's got to make sense. No, you don't bring the RuneScape character into Grand Theft Auto. Maybe you bring in him to, I don't know, Diablo or something. I don't know, somewhere else. Like,
right. I mean, I get you. But like, but like, whatever it is, right? It's like, all right, RuneScape into Diablo. The quality of like the assets are still very different. Like a RuneScape asset does not look the same, or is of the same quality as a Diablo asset. And that, like what Annie's saying, is just going to take you away from the immersion of the game, right? It's just going to be like, oh, damn, it feels like, is this an unfinished asset? I don't know. I just feel like it's, and like, I think we're just looking at it from rose-colored glasses. Like people that have watched Ready Player One, they're just like, yo, like, this is what we want. And I get it. It's like, idealistically, that's what we want. Realistically, I doubt it. And it's just like you say, like, I'm going to put it in a very simple analogy, right? If you buy a chocolate cake, you want it to be chocolate. You don't want strawberry, banana, I don't know, ice cream. Actually, ice cream might be a good addition. But like I don't know, like watermelon. Like, you don't want to put random stuff on it, because it takes away from what it is, a chocolate cake. And I think that's the same thing here. Like, Grand Theft Auto is going to be Grand Theft Auto. Like, we don't need to add extra stuff. I'd like to see, and again, I'm not saying I don't want interoperability. I just think that we need to do it step by step and actually like get something that works first. And to me, that first step is an interoperable IP. I think that's just the clearest thing. That's like, it's beneficial to like the user experience and for the company themselves, which can, if they do interoperable assets, they can do what Illuvium is doing, where you have one main game to collect these assets, and then the rest of the games are all free to play. And you can use those assets in those games. Like, that to me makes sense. The whole free to play, I don't think is going away. That's my take there. Yeah. So I'm sorry, all interoperable like fans that really want that. I stand against you guys there.
All right. So you two obviously have a different opinion than I do. And I want to hear from all you gamers. Like, what do you guys think? Are you on my side, or are you on Andy and TSG side? Because I think I agree with what you said there, TC. Like, we don't necessarily need, we don't need a Pikachu in Grand Theft Auto. That makes sense. We don't need to. And GTA is GTA because it's GTA, not because you're able to get more stuff into it. I think I agree with you guys say there. Like, it removes the significance. For me, it would make GTA feel like, I don't know, not as valuable when you get random shit in there. I do agree with that, but I do think
unless there's a game that actually is that. It's like, yo, this is the game where everything can be in here. And it's just like a piss take game. Like, if we have the World Wide Web for a game and everything can be on there. If that's the experience that someone wants to build, go for it. Yeah, like, fair play. But
yeah, I could see, I can see something maybe emerging where you have a shared space. So this metaverse concept, and imagine instead of it being an open world environment where you're just out there doing everything together, instead imagining it as maybe a gathering place with thousands of portals that you can walk through, and each portal that you go through takes you into a separate universe of a game ecosystem. And so you can all queue up and be hanging out together in essentially the lobby, right? So if we think of this as like the lobby of the, is the metaverse, where you're all there. You can, Will, you can have your a RuneScape character, TSG, you can be your Pikachu, and I can be your World of Warcraft shaman, whatever. We're all just hanging out. And then when we break up, I'm going to go through my portal. Will, you're going to go through yours. And each of us gets to experience this immersive gameplay that we want with our actual characters that make sense in those games. And over time, you're going to see cross IP branding that might make sense to be integrated, but it's going to be, I think, more tightly controlled. So I could see something like that evolving, where this is sort of the 2030, 2040s version of the internet chat rooms that evolved in the 90s and early 2000s. I could see something like that. There's actually a really interesting book series. Piers Anthony is one of my favorite authors. He does fantasy books. He has a series called The Apprentice Adept, and it's set in a world of Xanth. And basically, everyone in this world is a gamer, and you basically every day you have a chance to play games against other people, and your sort of rank within that social structure and your income is based on how you do in the games. And there are all sorts of games. There's intellectual ones, and there's physical competitions, and so on. And so, like, you're always paired up in matchmaking for thousands of different types of games. I could see something like that where you've got like global leaderboards and visibility across all these universes that makes sense. So that's how I might see a compelling example of a V0 of the metaverse evolving.
Yeah, I think that's what the whole metaverse. Sorry, Will. I think that's what the whole like meta hardware is going to do. I think they're going to like have that lobby. I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Will.
I believe. No, I just wanted to agree, and I was like, I just like the exact what you just explained, Annie, like that whole world, like the lobby, that's where you gather. That's I thought of that when TSG was talking, and I didn't know how to put it, but you put it like you explained it so well. And for me, it's like, I want to own my, like I said, like PlayStation, because that's what PlayStation at home kind of was. And you could go into small other mini games and stuff. And I want to have my own like apartment, my own house there, and I want to like have my NFTs on the walls and all that. I won't let go of that. So super interesting conversation. It was a spice one too. That last topic.
And before we wrap up, let me say one more thing. So in defense of the open metaverse, I want that lobby to be open, and I don't want to have to pay $20 a day to Zuckerberg to be able to enter the lobby to go into the games that I want. That's my take on that.
Right? Zuckbucks.
Exactly. No Zuckbucks.
No, definitely no Zuckbucks. Yo, I love that idea. It's way down the line, obviously. But let's see, like that's a vision, a picture of Web3 that I would love to see. Like that's what when I first heard of Web3, that's what I imagined. Like, I imagine like that kind of thing would be so cool. Loved your guys' takes on it, although it was different, which makes it so good. Definitely want to hear your viewers' thoughts on it down below. And if you haven't catched the other episodes, we're rotating, like you said, TSG. This episode is on your channel. And then Annie, the last one was on yours, and then the one before was on mine. So make sure you check out all of our channels. They're down below in the description. And once more, if you want to check out the clips, the highlights of these episodes, if you've only got like 5 minutes, you're 10 minutes, you're having dinner, you're at the gym, you're in your car, check out the Gaming on the Block clips channel that is linked down below as well. We've got all the goodies there. And that's it for me. Guys, take it off and go ahead.
No, I appreciate you all. Thank you guys.
I was expecting thank you guys for the talk today. Thanks for the viewers. But if you guys want to do a peace out, sure.
No, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. Now, appreciate you guys for watching. Again, always super excited to have these chats. And I'm actually very, very happy that we disagreed on something for the first time. I thought it was going to be forever disagreeing. So this was a good one. Appreciate you guys. Annie, go for it, man.
Yeah, I think the exciting part for me for all these discussions is that we're really helping to create and shape thoughts around Web3 gaming. And this is going to reverberate for years because the companies that are building today, whether they're the infrastructure platforms or they're the actual games, they're listening to the discussion that's going on and taking a lot of their approaches from what the community is discussing, how they view this space that we're going to create. And so, as always, my goal is to make sure that we're contributing to the conversation in a way that has the world in 2030s and 2040s and 50s be the world that we want our kids and grandkids to live in and play in. And so let's make sure that we're building the best version of the metaverse that we all can.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
awesome. I appreciate you guys for joining me for this podcast and appreciate all of you viewers. Please let us know your thoughts down below because this was a spicy one. With that said, appreciate you once again, and we'll see you in the next episode.